My stuff is very complex. If you look over all the books, it's like hundreds of drills drawn from dozens of methods scattered over 14 books. And I constantly get asked, where's the starting point? Where's the roadmap? Where's the syllabus? Where's the graduated layers of progress and all this? And I've had students who have tried to help me with that. They're really sweet of them. They've tried to put together a little curricular syllabus, blog posts, and assemble it all somehow into a teaching structure. But somehow I'm just not built that way to do things like that. And I appreciate their efforts, but it's just too much to deal with. But I constantly get asked, is there any one thing, is there any one starting point, one thread on the sweater here that we can just pull on that one thread at least and get the most for the least, basically? I don't blame people, but, time and space, effort, and knowledge in general, everything's limited in life. So we need to have something that can be just a little bedrock. And there is such a thing. And now I'm going to give it to you. It's already in all my books and everything. It's already there, explicitly, implicitly. But now I'm going to really emphasize it. If you don't do anything else, this is the GOAT, all right? And it's something that I wish I could say, somebody should have told me this earlier. I wish I'd have known. But the sad thing is I did know. Someone did tell me this very early, over and over again, hundreds, even thousands of times. And it's not that I totally ignored it. Not at all. I mean, it's part of the training we did in Tai Chi, but I didn't really understand it to the depth that my teacher intended to sort of imbue me with it. Now I do. Now I really get it. So I want you guys to just take this one little gem if you don't do anything else, or even more applicable in a way, if you do tons of other things. Like you may be someone who does some 8-hour protocol of Taoist meditation all night and hooking your kidneys to your thorax or God knows what all. And you've got a whole Neidan thing with inner and outer orbits and all kind of stuff happening. Okay, fine. No matter what. Or if you're just an absolute beginner, you've never done anything in martial arts or never anything in internal, you may be coming from any direction. This is the GOAT, okay? This is the internal GOAT. It's the root. It's everything. And Benjamin Lowe, it comes from Benjamin Lowe, my teacher, and how many times and in how many different ways, from how many different angles did he emphasize this? And basically tell me explicitly, implicitly, in class, out of class, with formal teaching, with just eating noodles at the restaurant, in every possible way he emphasized this is basically the entire macrocosm, or microcosm, I should say, of the art, like a hologram where every piece reflects the whole. This piece is the whole. And he said that in so many different ways. So I don't want to beat the horse to death in the intro here, but I hope you get the point. This is the GOAT. Do this if you don't do anything else, or if you do everything else, also do this. Do this no matter what, okay? And everything you do will be massively enhanced by this. As always with my work, the point of it is to actually have a tangible experience of the energy, not to find it in a book or see it in a Taoist painting or have your teacher blab about it constantly, but you don't really know what it is. You've got to feel it. It's got to be part of your experience of life. It's got to be just as real as dropping a brick on your foot, although it's much more pleasant and interesting than that, but it's got to have that same tangible, immediate reality, and it does, and it will, if you do it this way, okay? So the point of this is just going to be one stance, which I presented many times in all my books and everything, but I'm going to really hammer it on this video, okay, once and for all, because there's just too much stuff out there. Even just my own stuff is too much. So you've got to approach it as though feel it to feed it. If you can't feel it, you can't feed it, okay? So you can't really do anything. You can't progress. You can't intensify and amplify something that you can't feel to begin with, all right? So the goal will always be feel it to feed it. And to do that, we're going to have to start with the physical. There's a little bit of physicality to this, although that isn't really the point. It's not meant to develop your legs or something for better root for push hands, although it will have that effect, but it isn't for that purpose. It's for the energy, which in turn, of course, will greatly enhance your push hand skills and everything else you do. But the point is, it's not a physical thing. It's not meant to build bigger thighs that can endure the burn longer than somebody else. You know, it's not that kind of bullshit, okay? So it is a purely internal is what I'm trying to say. But it's very, very simple in terms of its physicality. In fact, even the internal part's very simple. It just works by itself. But here's what we're going to have to do. First of all, you have to understand a little bit about the energy. The energy itself is part of the human body. It manifests in different ways, just like water can be ice or snow or humidity or rivers and oceans and lakes and all these different states that it has, steam and vapor, all this kind of stuff. The energy is the same way. There's only one energy, really, but it manifests in so many different ways, especially in the beginning, near the starting gate. You're going to get all these different sensations, and then you'll be like, well, obviously this stuff is bullshit because person A and teacher A feels it this way, and this other guy feels it that way, and they all talk about it differently, so it can't be anything meaningful. It can't cohere to anything. Well, that's nonsense. Just like the 7 guys feeling the elephant. It's like saying there's no such thing as an elephant because one guy said it's like a feather dust and the other guy said it's like a tree or a wall. Can't be any elephant. No, there is one thing. It's just that it manifests in different ways, just like water, okay? So read my books to get the energy model. The idea being that there's sort of an accumulation in your dantian, and you have to learn how to feel that and work with that. Then the energy actually sinks all the way to your feet. It can then blast up through your entire body, including your head, actually. But it's not a big kundalini emergency. It's not any kind of crazy spiritual disaster. It's only the light part of the energy, the yin part of the energy that goes through your head. The professor talked about this. This is in all my books. I don't want to beat it to death now. Then it will come through your chest and your throat and your hands and come out through your fingers and hands. Okay, fine. But what are we talking about here as a drill, okay? And this is going to be the simplest drill with the most minimal space, time, effort, learning, clothing, everything. This is going to be the simplest possible thing you can do, and that's why it's the GOAT, greatest of all time, okay? So this drill is what's called Ti Shou, or Hui Pipa, play guitar. So raise hands or play guitar. Now this is in the Professor Cheng Man-ch'ing ZMQ 37 form. And it's in one version, you support yourself on your left leg and one on your right leg. But it's basically, it is the same pose. Ben told me it's the same pose, it just has 2 different names. Now, there might be some pedants out there who can argue, pundits, whatever, who can argue this and that. Well, the name's different, it must be different, blah, blah, blah. My teacher says it's different. Who cares? I don't care. I only care what Ben told me. He said it's the same thing. And in terms of the energy effect, it's absolutely the same thing. So we're going to treat this pose as being the same thing. I'll just call it raise hands for now. So it does reflect all of the Benjamin Low principles, the 5 principles, which are body upright, relaxed, separate yin yang, and beautiful lady's hand, this particular shape. It's in all my books. It's in Ben's discussions and books and videos too. And finally, turn the waist, all right? So all these things are going to be reflected in this pose. And you can just look at the model of Ben himself doing it. That's my teacher. And he would talk about anecdotes related to this particular practice, because when he first learned from the professor, the first side of this, where you're supporting yourself on your left leg, it comes right after the first single whip in the form. So it's very early in the form. It's like named pose number 5 or 6 or maybe 7 at the latest. So therefore, he learned this fairly early. The professor taught very slow from the beginning, but after maybe a couple months, he had made it to this pose, okay? The first raise hands, the first play guitar, whatever you want to call it. And then the professor just stopped teaching him. And he would come in every single day, and he would just hold this thing until he almost fell down, and then he'd get up and keep holding it more and more and more. That would be the entire session. For day after day, week after week, month after month even, he was just doing this until finally the professor, with some family pressure, whatever, took pity on him and began to teach him the rest of the form. But I think that experience kind of branded him and made him go deeper and deeper into this until he realized that this is actually the source of the Tai Chi power and was the source of his unbelievably great accomplishment. So we can replicate this if we take it that seriously. Unfortunately, we don't have this kind of traditional teacher anymore to kind of put us in that position. And we'd all quit if they did. You know, this guy's ripping me off, man. I'd just go there and stand there. He don't even pay attention and look at me. We'd be all pissed, right? What kind of teacher is this? And he doesn't like me, or I don't like him, whatever. Can't do it anymore. But with this video, I'm just going to give it to you and hope for the best. So if you look at the picture, you can see that we've got separation of weight going on. Obviously, one leg is light and one is heavy. I'm going to talk more about that. You can see that his waist is square to the front. In this case, that's what we mean by turn the waist. We mean don't let the waist cant off to the side so that it's not aligned with the vector of the pose. Always have your waist squarely lined up. That's what we're going to mean by turn the waist in this pose. There's more we could say, but that's enough for this. Obviously, it has beautiful lady's hands in both hands. and the body's upright and relaxed. So it's got all the basic principles. Okay, so those are the 5 things that apply to every single principle, every single pose, including this one, of course. Now, let's drill in a little more and see exactly how we apply a few of these principles to this pose, to practicing this particular pose in goat mode, okay? Which I'm going to give you the timing, how much you need to do each day, which is very minimal. But how do you apply these sort of general principles that apply to every pose to this practice in particular? And there's a couple of things that are very important in that respect. The first one is the feeling, number one principle as applied to this practice, okay, is the feeling of lowering or sinking. You're going to have to mentally generate the idea or the feeling that you're about to lower yourself down, which obviously means a little more bend in the leg. You'd have to bend your support leg a little more, right, to go down. But the key thing is, don't actually try to do that physically, okay? We're not trying to turn this into a pistol squat. We're not trying to show how strong our thighs are and impress people with leg day at the gym, okay? It's not that. So you don't actually start to physically move, because that would ruin it. Because at a certain point, you'd go too far. And then you'd have to pop up again, or you'd have to stop, or you'd be so distracted by the pain and shaking in your leg that you'd ruin the effect. And in fact, it works better with mental lowering anyway. It's not just like avoiding fatigue or injury. It's that it actually will work better. Because your mind is everything. So you need to generate the feeling that you're about to sink down more into it. As though like the teacher's walking toward you and he's going to correct you and he's going to make you sink more. Just prepare for that, but don't actually start to sink much. Of course, you need to begin with a decent bend in your leg. Just sit down as much as you can without undue strain, all right? Don't try to make it into a pistol squat or show off. Just get to a reasonable depth, like you can see in the pictures of Ben Lowe himself doing it. He doesn't try to get, although he could do a pistol squat, no problem. We saw there's a great photo of him doing that. He could do that easily at any age, but that's not the point. You can see that he's not trying to show off by getting into some crazy wushu pistol squat thing. Okay? So just do it relative to the picture you see and you'll be fine. But the whole time you're doing it, and we'll talk about timing later, you need to have the feeling that you are about to lower, that you are just like starting to lower, okay? At all times, throughout the span of this is a static practice. You're just going to do it on one side for a certain time. We'll talk about it, and then on the other. But you need throughout that time to be actively feeling that you're about to lower yourself. And so your foot is like when an elevator goes up and you're standing there, you have that little feeling of engagement at your foot, at the support foot, okay? So support foot is the first thing, the first super important micro principle of this practice. Now, the second super important micro principle of this practice, taking the general principles and applying them onto this one pose, this one practice, is the other foot, the non-support foot. I don't know what to call it, the extended foot, the light foot, whatever, the yin foot, whatever you want to call it. We've talked about you need that feeling of lowering, that mental intent to lower in the support foot. What about the other one? And this is where people get confused, right? Because we always say this is a so-called 100-0 pose, okay, in terms of weighting. And remember, that's one of the 5 principles is separate weight, yin, yang, try to fully distinguish them. So when we talk about 100-0, though, if you don't do the pose, you won't realize this. But if you start to do it, you'll realize there's a little unclarity there, a little ambiguity there. Because what does it really mean to be 100-0? Because you could say, and to be relaxed, okay? Those two together, do they contradict each other or not? Because if you really relaxed your extended leg, I mean completely relaxed every muscle so that if someone touched you, it's just like tofu, from your femoral joint all the way into your big toe, basically. Everything tofu, then your foot at that, let's say this is my foot, this is my leg, whatever, you'd actually be resting your leg on the floor, okay, if you were completely relaxed. And remember, your leg is at least, like one leg is roughly 20% or so of your full body weight. So that is not 100-0, right? Since your leg itself, obviously your main body weight is supported by the heavy leg, but still, it's not exactly the same thing as 100-0, right? It's more like 80-20 or 90-10 or something, but it is a little different. So is that a contradiction? And then you say, well, okay, I can make it 100-0 if you just raise it up or even pick it up completely. Then obviously it becomes 100-0, but you notice what's happened. In order to pick it up, even a little bit, you've had to engage at least a few muscles. Now, you don't have to be super tense, it's not like a weight workout, but you do have to engage some muscles in order to raise that leg and make it truly 100-0, like a kick, for example. A kick, at waist level or something, well, obviously you've had to engage that kicking leg to do that, to achieve that 100-0. But what I want to emphasize here is that there's a sweet spot in between, and it may be a little bit of a contradiction, but this is the spot you need to cultivate, okay? This is very important in the extended leg. What you need to do is imagine, and don't do this on carpet, do this on a firm floor, okay? So I'm not saying do this on carpet, but I'm saying imagine you were doing it on carpet, okay? Carpet with some nap, not like super plush, like 3 inches or something, but at least a little bit of nap, like a half inch or an inch, whatever, you know, a little bit of those fibers sticking up that give it that squishiness. Okay, if you were on a carpet and you completely rested your foot on the carpet, your heel would imprint into the nap, right? It would imprint onto it. And then, of course, if you raised your foot completely, you'd have no effect on the nap. It would be as though there were nothing on there, okay? Now, you want to imagine that your heel is in contact with the nap and that it is bending it, okay? So imagine your leg has enough weight, I mean, it's not really much weight, but it has enough substance that it is actually leaving a small impression in the carpet nap, but it's not resting on the base of the floor or the layer of the carpet that has no nap, that's just a fiber layer. Your heel isn't resting on that. But your heel is not out of contact with the nap either. And it's actually impressing the nap very, very slightly. It's leaving a little hollow. Your heel would leave a slight hollow, but it wouldn't rest on the fiber base of the carpet. That's the feeling you want. And if you do this long enough, like even just a week or two, you'll start to understand the difference of 3 states. One is where you're actually just resting your leg's weight on the full floor and that's it. The other one is you've got your leg up, it's out of contact, and you know that your muscles are engaged there in raising it. But this other state, this carpet nap state that I'm talking about, this is the one that will give you the energy, because first start by just resting it completely on the floor and then raise it, which means engaging a few muscles. You'll be surprised how few muscles you need to engage to get this carpet nap state. Engage a few muscles enough to just raise it off the fiber of the carpet, but not really bring it into full extension or engagement. And that moment is when you'll get this reverb of energy. Remember, the energy starts in the dantian, it reverbs off your feet. Well, one way to make it reverb is to just do the minimal bit of support tension you need, engagement. I won't even say tension, I'll say engagement of a few leg muscles to bring it up to that carpet nap impression level. Just that bit of squeezing of those few muscles will actually send the rush of energy up through your lower body, and your dantian will fill from below, which I've talked about a million times in my books, but it's really interesting. The energy will, see, first it sank down, there, qi chen dantian, everyone knows that, right? We constantly talk about that. But your energy comes up and you actually feel it filling your torso from below. And the way you do that is by being sensitive to that minimal bit of engagement. And then you hold that way throughout the span of time that you're doing the drill. And I'll talk about timing in a minute. So for the whole span, which isn't too long, don't worry, we don't go crazy, but throughout that span, you're going to be maintaining that state. And it will take a little bit of, not overly burdensome, but a little bit of constant mental attention to make sure that you haven't given up and started resting it there, or you haven't gotten mentally lazy and just, oh, the hell with it, I'll just raise it up, so I'm guaranteed to have 100-0. No, you need to be sensitive to that minimal engagement, and that will send the energy blasting up through your extended foot. So we've covered points. Now, point number 1, which was, what do you do about the support, the feeling of support, that feeling, intention only to lower. We've talked about the extended leg, this whole thing about the different states of support and relaxation and engagement in the extended leg. So we've sort of covered most of the lower body. Now, the next micro principle, that is application of the big 5 principles into this particular stance, this particular practice. The next one you're going to need to think about is your hands. Now, of course, your hands are going to be shaped like beautiful ladies' hands. That's obvious. You can see that in the pictures. That shouldn't need to belabor that. It's in all my books, okay? Fine. But mentally, what you're going to do is you're going to do this feeling of support in the support leg. You're going to do this feeling of little minimal engagement in the front leg. While doing all that, you're going to have enough of your brain left over to not just keep the beautiful lady's hand shape, okay, which is just a gross physical shape. It's important, but it's only the beginning. Mentally, you want to keep your primary focus. So put 15% of your attention on this feeling of always lowering, 15% of your attention on keeping the right degree of engagement in the front leg, But like most of your mind, like 70% of your mind is going to be here in your hands. Very, very important. Don't get lost in the lower body, or God forbid, just start thinking about where you park the car. Or if you left the lights on, you know, I assume nobody watching this would fall into that kind of problem. But no, mentally, you've got to very specifically keep your mind focused gently without any tension. You're not grabbing anything, but keep your mind focused on your hands. Now, what about your hands? Is it just keep your mind focused on, is this beautiful lady's hand? Is this beautiful lady's hand? No, go beyond that. Mentally, you want to feel the inner surface of your hand, okay? What is the inner surface? It's everywhere that if I completely coated my hands with paint, I've talked about this in my books, actually everything I'm saying here I've talked about in my books, but people keep asking me, so I'm doing this. Okay, suppose I took a big paintbrush or a spray paint and completely covered my hand with paint, so no cell on the surface of my hand was left unpainted. But then I made the beautiful lady's hand shape against the wall, okay? The parts that, when I took my hand away, the parts that would leave paint prints on the wall are the parts that matter, because those are the parts that will fill first. Those are the puffy parts of the inner surface of your hand. Obviously, this big meaty part is one. Obviously, this whole, the front part of this ridge, you know, since we're against the wall, it won't be the side, but it'll be the front part of that same ridge here. It'll be this knuckle ridge on the inside of the knuckle ridge, and as I said, the puffy parts of the fingers, maybe a little bit between the joints of the fingers. So it'd be kind of a spotty shape configuration of your hand on the wall. Those are the parts that will fill with energy as you do this practice. They will start to actually puff up. And Benlo, my teacher, could actually show it like Jiffy Pop popcorn. He could actually boop, you know. And he told me that ability came from doing this. And back in the day, you know, it didn't really register. I don't know why. It's like, it's too simple. You know, this pose is so simple looking and so obvious, and it comes early in the form, and who cares, right? I mean, you want some neidan, you want something exotic and fancy, you want to do the 64 bagua palm changes. You don't want this stupid thing where you just stand for a few minutes. It's so boring and pedestrian and plebeian. Not that I thought that explicitly, but that's just the way we are as human animals, you know? So I didn't get it. I really didn't get it at first. I always did it as part of the practice. You know, we stood, we learned it, we practiced it, but I didn't see the reason that he was pushing this so hard in every way, implicitly, explicitly, in class, out of class, whatever, making us hold it, correcting it, all this. And he told me so many times, you know, sometimes we'd just be waiting in line somewhere, like at a restaurant or some activity, or I'd give him a ride somewhere. He'd say, you know, it's all really just raise hands or play guitar. Just do that. You'll be, you know, it's like, kept on hinting at it. And then finally I began to realize, oh my God, all you have to do is do this a few minutes a day, and just that gives it 90% of any gain you'll ever get from this. Okay, anyway, that's where you need to have your mind in both hands equally. It's not that the front one gets more. It's nothing. They are absolutely equal. And, you know, part of the physical teaching of this is that your near palm is facing the inner forearm. Okay, and you'll see people with slightly different positions, but basically it's meant to be that palm faces forearm. It's not way up or way down or anything like that, okay? So that's the next principle. The inner hand surface, that's where your mind primarily is going to be. All right, the final thing. This is number 4 of the micro principles that are specifically important for this particular practice. And we've talked about the 2 legs, they're differently engaged. We've talked about the primary mental focus on your hands. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the torso, the diaphragm, and the belly. This isn't something that you're going to need to do with your mind. This is more like a result that you'll notice as you keep practicing this over the days, over the weeks, whatever. It won't take that long. You'll start to understand this, and this will emerge by itself if you do the other things that I've already talked about with the legs and the hands, and of course the basic posture configuration. Your stance is correct. But what will happen is if you can relax your belly. So Ben always used to say, your belly is not ice, it's water, okay? Most of us are way too tense there, either because we're very athletic, so we're doing sit-ups and crunches all the time, which is, you know, giving us too much residual tension there, or we're just lazy and we don't even think about it, so it's just a sort of daily life tension has crept in. So either way, it's not good. So you need to completely relax your belly, but have just a little bit of mental engagement there. Just, I would say, awareness there. No tension, but just awareness there. And that, of course, brings us to the subject of breathing. Is there any special breathing with this? No, you don't need to do any special breathing. Just, you'll see that your breath will slow down. It'll become soft, easy, natural, long. That'll happen by itself. You don't have to control. You're not doing bone marrow breathing or breath of fire or any crazy protocol like that. Those are fine for the practices that they're part of, but they're not part of this. So let your breath be natural and work on the other mental, believe me, your mind will have plenty to do without micromanaging your breath. But what you'll find if you do all this other stuff, and then if you gently relax, just gently relax your whole torso, including your diaphragm and belly, of course, just gently relax everything, you'll find that what I call the hard wave starts up. And the hard wave at first will be keyed into your breathing, but not because you're doing it, okay? It will happen by itself. You'll realize that as you inhale, the hard wave, and by the way, hard wave is kind of a misnomer. It's just that I should say more the clear wave, I don't know what to call it, where the beats are very obvious. Okay, they're like boom, 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 boom. They're not hard in the sense that it's, beating you up or something, or it's external. No, it's just like the frequency of it is very clear, very obvious. I should call it the obvious wave, like the obvious energy. Sometimes we talk about in Xing Yi. It's actually, that's the name of the beginning of the hard wave. They actually call the obvious energy, the clear energy. Maybe I should call it that. But anyway, for now, I'll just call it the hard wave, like my book. So you'll realize that as you inhale, you're feeling it because your torso is relaxed. You're doing all this other stuff, right? You'll feel that, oh my God, your whole lower body is resonating at the frequency of the hard wave, okay, as you inhale. And then you pause for a second, and then just naturally, without forcing it, and then you're exhaling. And again, as you exhale, your whole body, especially the lower body, the diaphragm, the dantian, is resonating at that frequency. And you'll realize that it doesn't matter whether you're inhaling or exhaling. That frequency is now become ongoing. It's become entrained. It's just happening through the entire time you're standing there, whether you're inhaling or exhaling. That little bit of gentle breath motion has somehow triggered and then entrained the hard wave resonance into you, okay? That is a purely internal phenomenon. And it is so fun. It feels so good because your entire lower torso is like filling with this resonant power, this resonant energy. And all you're doing is standing there with the correct, simple, non-crazy protocol. You're not going out of your mind and, astrally projecting to the moon or anything weird. It's just like, whoa, this thing is like booming with energy. Okay, and then over time, as you keep going, the resonance of the clear wave, the hard wave, whatever I want to call it now, that will then transcend the lower level frequency and become a single higher level frequency that is no longer perceived as individual bumps, okay? In a car, the little explosions, internal combustion, right? Little explosions are happening all the time, and yet the wheels can turn continuously. It's not like the wheel turns when one, boom, something fires in the carburetor, and then boom, the wheel turns that much, and then boom again, wheel turns again. No, that would be the hard wave. But the explosions themselves are at a certain frequency. They're not continuous. They're like boom, boom. They are continuous, but they are not, an unbroken ejection of power. They're like boom, 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 boom. But the motion that they support is continuous, okay? So this is just like the hard wave, clear wave, whatever. It's firing at this certain resonance, which you'll actually feel. But then it triggers to the next level, which I've called the soft wave. Maybe I should call it the soft wash, the clear wave. I don't know what to call it. But anyway, it is then a single, the frequency is so high that it's not perceived as having periodic nature, okay? It's perceived as a single current, a single surge, like a river that a river may have a very powerful current, but you're not seeing pulses. You're not seeing pulses, okay? But this is like a car where there are pulses underneath, energetic pulses driving this, but they are then transduced into a continuous motion like the wheels of the car. I've just given you the idea. You'll feel it yourself. You won't even need to watch this again to remind yourself. You'll feel it. Okay, we've pretty much gone over everything. The final thing I need to talk about is time. Time is very important, very practical, right? There's no point in talking about all this other stuff if you don't have any understanding of how does it fit as far as time. Now, you may be someone who does 8 hours a day, like we used to do of the E-Trans standing or something, hours and hours a day anyway. And people used to visit who actually told us they would stand like this, post standing for 8 hours every single day. They told us that. I don't know. You might be someone like that. I don't know. Or maybe you practice all day, or maybe you have no time at all. Doesn't matter. Here's all you have to do, really. To get the benefit of this is very simple. What you're going to do is in the morning, you're going to take your smartphone as a timer, okay? You're going to set it in 2-minute intervals, just 2 minutes, okay? Set it up so that you can hit the button and then stand for 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes is enough. You could do more if you want, but you really don't need to. And you're just going to, if you overdo, you're just going to drop this and forget it. And it'll be 6 months later, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, maybe I'll try that again. Nah, you've already blown it in that case. So what you want to do is just 2 minutes. And then 2 minutes where, let's say you start with your support leg, your strong leg is your right leg. So you do for 2 minutes, beep, beep, beep. Just gently switch over to the left leg and do the same thing. Another 2 minutes, beep, beep, you're done. That's it. That's your morning practice of this. Of course, you can go on and do 64 Bagua changes and Xingyi animals and Shaolin and Chen style, hundreds of moves and whatever. Or you can do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You can box all day. It doesn't matter. I'm talking about this particular practice, okay? Or you can meditate the rest of the day. Fine. But I'm talking about this, or you can do the whole ZMQ Tai Chi form right after this. That's very good. This is a great warm-up for that, or for anything, really. But anyway, that's the point. That's your morning session. Good to go. 4 minutes. Exactly 4 minutes. That's all you need. 2 minutes on one side, 2 minutes on the other. Then do the same thing in the evening. Okay? That's all you have to do, and you will really start to feel this after a couple of weeks. And you will feel as soon as you get into the situation, right when you hit the timer, now you're standing, and you'll feel the lowering in your heavy foot, right, in your support foot. That's the first thing you'll set up. And very quickly, within a second or two, you'll be able to assemble all this, reassemble all this for every practice. So as you start to stand, right away you feel the support foot, number one, okay? Then do the engagement, that carpet nap thing I talked about. Make sure that your extended foot, your light foot is kind of set up correctly. And you'll have to check in with that over the 2 minutes because you can't just let it run by itself or the foot will start to sink. So sort of set that up and check in with that. Once you've done that, put your mind here with a little bit of residue to make sure your lower body stays right. Put your mind into this painted surface of your hands, and that's going to be your main focus throughout the span. And then just let the energy start to reverb out through your torso as you do this. You will feel that the inner surfaces of your hands are connected to this, not just a little dantian point. The whole lower belly, the whole lower torso is going to be, this thing is curved. It's almost like your sort of your belly in a way anyway, right? Everyone has a very slight protuberance there. So it's almost like you've got 3 of these bellies and they're all connected, or maybe they're all just one. But anyway, you'll feel a connection between this, and that. And then you just enjoy that for the 2 minutes. Just gently, you don't have to think about this or that. You have enough to do with your mind, just keeping your configuration right. It's only 2 minutes anyway, no big deal. Do the other side, you're done, you're good to go. This is the GOAT. Do it.